The stars stretched endlessly in the black void, cold and indifferent, as the Varkathi dreadnought Vorkalthus glided through the void like a silent predator. It was a masterpiece of war, a behemoth of reinforced alloy and plasma-laced weaponry, a ship that had conquered countless lesser species. Commander Zalroth stood at the bridge, his 4 clawed feet gripping the command platform, his 6 amber eyes scanning the vastness of space. He had conquered over a dozen systems for the Varkathi Dominion, crushed entire fleets beneath his heel, and turned civilizations to smoldering ruins. Yet, as he stared at the tactical display, something was off. "Commander, we've detected an unidentified vessel on the outskirts of the system," Second Officer Tovlan reported, his mandibles clicking together in irritation. "It is not broadcasting any known identification codes." Zalroth frowned. This was Dominion space. No species in their right mind would dare enter without permission. "Bring it on screen," he ordered. The display flickered to life, and the bridge fell into an eerie silence. The vessel was crude, haphazard. It lacked the symmetrical, precision-crafted hull of a Varkathi warship. It was a mess, a patchwork of modular plating, exposed piping, and what looked like welded-on reinforcements. It was as if someone had taken spare parts from a dozen different ships and jammed them together in a rough approximation of a functioning spacecraft. And yet it was moving fast. Zalroth's mandibles twitched in disgust. "What is that?" Tovlan ran a rapid scan, his lower arms tapping furiously at the control panel. "Uncertain, Commander. It does not match any known Dominion records. It appears to be a human vessel." Zalroth's 6 eyes narrowed. Humans. The Dominion had only recently encountered them. At first, they had seemed insignificant, a minor species barely capable of space travel, with fragile, soft bodies and primitive weaponry. But they had resisted. And that was unacceptable. The Dominion had crushed every species that opposed them. It was a universal truth. Lesser beings did not stand against the Varkathi. The humans, however, had fought back in ways that made no sense. They did not engage in traditional warfare. They adapted, they improvised, they used tactics that defied logic. But in the end, they were still inferior. Zalroth flexed his claws. "Hail them." A moment passed. No response. "Typical primitives," he muttered. "Weapon status? Fully operational. Target their engines. Disable them. Let's see what these creatures are made of." A pulse of plasma energy shot from the Vorkalthus, a blinding lance of power streaking toward the human vessel. It should have been a clean hit. There was no way that thing could have anticipated. The human ship rolled. Not an evasive maneuver in the traditional sense, not the precise, calculated movements of a Dominion warship. It twisted, erratically, chaotically, at an angle that no sane pilot would attempt. The plasma blast sailed past, missing by mere meters. Zalroth's primary eyes widened. "They're responding," Tovlan announced, his mandibles clicking in confusion. "They've sent a transmission." The view screen flickered again, revealing the face of a human. The creature was grinning. "Hey there, bug boys," the human said, leaning forward in his chair. He had short-cropped hair, a jagged scar across his left cheek, and a gleam in his eyes that set Zalroth's instincts on edge. "I see you tried to shoot us. That's not very polite." Zalroth bared his mandibles in irritation. "You are trespassing in Dominion space. Surrender your vessel immediately, or you will be destroyed." The human let out a short, barking laugh. "Yeah, see, that's not gonna happen." Zalroth felt his irritation boil into rage. "You are outmatched. Your ship is a disgrace. Your weapons are primitive. You have no chance of survival." The human's grin widened. "You really don't know what humans are, do you?" Zalroth growled, motioning to his weapons officer. "Fire again." The Vorkalthus unleashed another volley, this time, a spread of high-yield plasma rounds meant to box the human ship in. But instead of attempting a traditional evasive maneuver, the human vessel accelerated. Directly toward them. Zalroth's breath hitched as he watched the ship twist and weave through the plasma fire, closing the distance at an alarming rate. "What are they doing?" Tovlan hissed. "Impossible, Zalroth muttered. The human vessel rammed into the side of the Vorkalthus, embedding itself into the dreadnought's hull with a sickening crunch of metal. For a moment, the bridge was deathly silent. And then alarms blared. "Hull breach!" Tovlon shouted. They rammed us?" One of the officers sputtered in disbelief. "That's not a valid combat maneuver." But it didn't stop there. Hatches along the human vessel burst open, and suddenly, swarms of humans, dozens of them, poured into the corridors of the Vorkalthus. They were boarding them. Zalroth's mind struggled to process the sheer insanity of what he was witnessing. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't calculated warfare. This was lunacy. He spun to his officers. "Deploy security forces. Kill them all." The Varkathi warriors, taller, stronger, their exoskeletal armor gleaming, moved out with practiced discipline. This should have been easy. The humans had no natural weapons, no armor plating, no claws. And yet, "Aha!" A scream echoed through the comms. Zalroth turned sharply toward the displays, watching through security feeds as the first engagement unfolded. A single human, barreled down a corridor at full speed, tackling a Varkathi warrior. The alien soldier, caught off guard, went down hard, and the human followed up by repeatedly punching him in the face. With his bare hands, another human lobbed a small, round object into a Varkathi formation. A moment later, the device exploded, not with a conventional blast, but with an ear-splitting bang and a blinding flash of light. The warriors recoiled, their sensitive auditory and visual receptors overwhelmed. And the humans pounced. Zalroth watched in horror as his warriors, elite Dominion fighters, the pinnacle of evolution, were overwhelmed by laughing, shouting humans wielding a mix of projectile weapons, makeshift melee weapons, and sheer, unrelenting brutality. They fought dirty. They gouged, bit, tackled, and improvised. One human fired a weapon that shot a small, metal slug straight through a Varkathi warrior's carapace. Another simply picked up a fallen plasma rifle and used it against them. And worst of all, the humans were enjoying this. Zalroth had faced war before. He had seen the fear in the eyes of countless species as the Dominion crushed them. But never, never, had he encountered a species that reveled in combat like this. He turned sharply to Tovlon, his voice low and furious. "Who are these creatures?" The second officer, still watching the screens in stunned disbelief, gulped. "They call themselves humans," he said. Zalroth clenched his fists, his mind racing. For the first time in his long and decorated career, an unfamiliar sensation crept into his gut. It was not anger. It was not frustration. It was fear. The battle raged through the Vorkalthus like an uncontrolled inferno. The ship, once a bastion of Varkathi dominance, now echoed with the chaotic sounds of human war cries, gunfire, and the sickening crunch of brutal, hand-to-hand combat. Zalroth stormed down the central corridor, his 6 amber eyes scanning for the intruders as his 2 lower arms gripped his plasma blades tightly. His warriors were still fighting, still resisting, but this was unlike any conflict the Dominion had ever faced. The humans should have been losing. Outnumbered, outmatched, and technologically inferior, they should have been dying. Instead, they were winning. "Status report." Zalroth barked into his communicator. A burst of static, then a panicked voice came through. "Commander, we can't hold them back. They, arg." A horrible crunching sound followed, then silence. Zalroth's mandibles tightened. These creatures, these humans, had somehow turned a boarding action into an invasion. A Varkathi warrior sprinted toward him from the adjacent hallway, his chitinous armor marred with scorch marks. His breathing was ragged, his 4 arms shaking. "Commander," he gasped. They are relentless. We kill one, but the others just keep coming. They throw themselves into combat with no hesitation." Zalroth knew this to be true. He had seen it himself on the security feeds. The humans did not retreat like most prey species when faced with superior force. No, they charged forward. They adapted. He had watched as a group of human soldiers were pinned down by Varkathi suppressive fire, only for one of them, a male with a wild grin, grab a fallen warrior's plasma rifle and throw it like a spear at the nearest Varkathi officer, knocking the alien off balance before another human fired a slug thrower directly into his exposed throat. Zalroth had never seen such reckless ingenuity. Another explosion rocked the ship, and Zalrotha's communicator crackled again. "Commander! They've breached the central armory." His blood ran cold. If the humans took control of the ship's main weapons cache, the entire Vorkalthus would be at their mercy. "They're animals," one of his officers hissed as they hurried toward the armory. "No sense of strategy. Just chaos." Zalroth disagreed. This was not mindless aggression. This was something else. Something worse. These creatures did not fight like a conquering force. They fought like something born in the depths of a death world, something accustomed to constant struggle and survival against impossible odds. They fought like predators. As Zalroth neared the armory, the sound of combat grew deafening. He turned a corner and came face to face with the human invaders. At the center of the group stood the same scarred human from before, the one who had spoken to him over the comms. He was covered in blood, both human and Varkathi, and he was grinning. "Hey, bug boy," the human said, casually rolling his shoulders. "Took you long enough." Zalroth growled, his mandibles twitching. "You will die here, human." The scarred man just smirked and cracked his knuckles. "Maybe," he said, "but I'll make damn sure I take a few of you ugly bastards with me." And then, with no hesitation, he lunged. The impact was immediate and brutal. The scarred human moved like a predator, fast, unpredictable, and completely unafraid. He hit Zalroth with the force of a meteor, tackling the Varkathi commander backward as the battle exploded around them. Zalroth twisted, using his superior strength to shove the human away, but the moment he did, another human was already upon him, swinging a jagged piece of metal torn from the ship's hull. The makeshift weapon clashed against his armored plating, sending a painful vibration through his exoskeleton. "They don't stop. They don't hesitate." He lashed out, catching the second human with a powerful backhand. The man crumpled against the bulkhead with a sickening crunch, but another took his place immediately. The Varkathi warriors, despite their superior size and strength, were struggling. The humans fought with a level of ferocity that defied all logic. They improvised, turning the very environment into a weapon. One of them grabbed a fallen Varkathi's plasma rifle and overcharged it, throwing it into a group of warriors as it detonated in a massive burst of energy. Zalroth spun, his forearms moving in perfect coordination as he cut down another human, his plasma blade searing through flesh and bone. And yet, the humans kept coming. They threw themselves into battle with reckless abandon, shouting and laughing in the face of death. He had never seen anything like this. One of his officers, Tovlon, fought beside him, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "Commander, we must retreat. They're overwhelming us." Zalroth hated the idea of retreat. The Dominion did not run. They conquered. But as he looked around at the chaos unfolding in the corridors of his ship, he saw the grim truth. The humans weren't just winning. They were enjoying this. Zalroth made his decision. "Fall back to the bridge. We must regroup." Tovlon hesitated but obeyed, barking orders to the remaining Varkathi warriors. They moved quickly, disengaging from the battle as they retreated toward the command deck. But the humans? They didn't let them leave so easily. As the Varkathi forces pulled back, the humans pursued. They were not a species that let their enemies regroup. They hunted. Zalroth barely made it through the reinforced doors of the bridge before sealing them behind him. He turned, his breathing heavy, his exoskeleton cracked in several places. Tovlon was at the control panel, mandibles clicking furiously. "They have taken the armory, Commander. They now control most of the ship's weapons." Zalroth clenched his fists. "Then we will fight with what we have left." An alert blared across the command deck. The humans were breaching the bridge. The reinforced doors of the bridge groaned under the relentless assault from the humans outside. Sparks flew as makeshift explosives and brute force battered the entryway. Zalroth stood at the center of the command deck, his 6 amber eyes scanning the flickering tactical display. The Vorkalthus was lost. his forces overwhelmed, his ship invaded, and his command shattered. This was not how things were supposed to go. He had crushed a dozen species beneath his heel. He had conquered entire civilizations with ruthless efficiency. The Dominion had always been the apex predator of the stars. Until now. A loud, mechanical screech ripped through the bridge as the final locking mechanisms gave way. The doors burst open with a deafening explosion, and smoke filled the air. Through the haze they came. Humans. They looked like something from a nightmare, their armor scratched and bloodied, their weapons scavenged from both their own ship and the Varkathi dead. Some of them wielded Dominion plasma rifles as if they had been using them for years. Others carried brutal, jagged blades. And at the center of them stood the scarred human, the one who had spoken to Zalroth, the one who had smiled even when outnumbered. He stepped forward, rolling his shoulders as he took in the scene. "Wow," he said, whistling. "Nice place. Shame we had to wreck it." Zalroth's mandibles twitched in barely restrained rage. "You do not belong here." The human smirked. "Pretty sure we do. We won, didn't we?" Tovlon, standing to Zalroth's right, bared his fangs. "You think this is victory?" he spat. "You have taken a single ship. The Dominion will crush you for this." The human raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, because from where I'm standing your Dominion just got its ass kicked by a bunch of primitive Deathworlders with duct tape and a bad attitude." A murmur of laughter rippled through the human ranks. Zalroth took a slow step forward, his lower arms gripping his plasma blades. "Your tactics are madness. Your recklessness defies all logic. You should not have won this fight." The human shrugged. "Yeah, we get that a lot." Zalroth could not understand them. They should have surrendered. They should have been afraid. But they weren't. If anything, they looked like they were having fun. For the first time in his long career, Zalroth saw the truth. The Dominion had always believed itself the apex predator of the galaxy. The strongest. The deadliest. The only Deathworlders. They had been wrong. Humans weren't prey. They weren't weak. They weren't a minor nuisance to be crushed. They were something far worse. They were laughing killers. They were unstoppable. And as the scarred human grinned at him, Zalroth realized a terrifying fact. The Dominion had just made the worst mistake in its history. They had picked a fight with humans.